And tonight, in an exclusive interview that you will only see on Hannity, Republican vice presidential hopeful Congressman Paul Ryan sounds off on what has become the most divisive campaign in American history, from the president's class warfare rhetoric to the White House's repeated attempts to distort the Romney-Ryan economic plan. We have covered it all. And we'll have reaction from Dana Perino and Stuart Varney right after the interview. And I'll also get analysis from them on the other big story tonight, and that is the refusal of Missouri Senate candidate Todd Akin to end his candidacy following his controversial remarks on abortion and rape. Now, I interviewed him earlier today. We will have portions of that interview coming up later this hour. But first, I caught up with Congressman Ryan at a campaign stop in Carnegie, Pennsylvania. That was earlier today. Let's take a look. Congressman Ryan, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean.
All right, so you knew you were on the short list. You knew you were being vetted. Then you get a call to go to Massachusetts. You throw on a baseball cap, able to sneak through. Not one person noticed you?
No, I'm a big bow hunter, so I had a bow hunting hat on and blue jeans and just a T-shirt. And I flew to Hartford, Connecticut. And then Beth's 19-year-old son, Kurt, picked me up at the airport there and drove me to her house.
All right. And the media was on full VP watch. So you're dropped off at your home, and you sneak out in the backwoods. You have to navigate through the woods to another family member's house.
Yeah, so we live on the block I grew up on, and there are a patch of woods between the house I live in now and the house I grew up in. So those are the woods I spend my childhood in, building tree forts and capture the flag and all of that. And so I just snuck through those woods.
So no New York Times reporter would be able to keep up
so
in
they
those
would,
woods.
Yeah, so I'm an outdoorsy guy anyway. So I know those woods like the back of my hand. And my chief of staff just picked me up at the end of the block in his van, and we, along with my family, and we flew out to Virginia.
All right, you've been in Congress 14 years. You're at this meeting with Governor Romney. What are you talking about in terms of him asking you to be his running mate?
You know, it was one of the most moving conversations I've ever had with anybody. He told me where he thought the country was headed, how we got to get back on track, his life story, what is in his heart. And then he basically said, you share my values, and you have the kind of experience I'm going to need to help me fix this country's problems. Our experiences complement each other quite well, and we apply the same principles, founding principles, to the problems of the day. And he basically said, let's go fix this country.
And that was it? That's how he asked you?
Pretty much, yeah.
It was sort of like a proposal.
Yeah.
And you were ready to go. You know, look, there's been a lot of attacks already against you, but you kind of experienced this beforehand.
I've been doing this a while.
The Paul Ryan lookalike, throwing Granny over the cliff. David Axelrod, you're a right-wing ideologue. Your views are dangerous, he said. What is your reaction to that negativity, that level of attacks, just on you, and then we'll talk about Governor Romney?
I'm used to it. It's what we expect from President Obama these days. Look, this is what you do if you can't run on your record. The President Obama clearly cannot run on his record. All he's offering is more of the same. That's not good. Look at the economy. It's stagnating. And so what they're now going to try and do is bring this campaign down to little things. Distractions, distortions, smear, fear, anger, frustration. This is just that. The country's not going to buy it this time. Hope and change, we're not doing that anymore. They're doing attack and blame. And so I just think people are going to see through this. They want real leadership. They want us to get this country on the right track. So yes, it's a referendum on the president's failed leadership, but it's also the positive vision that we're offering about how to get our country back on track. The president's, he can't compete with that. He's not offering that. That's why they're doing those types of attacks.
But they're doing these attacks, but do you worry that on some level that they may work? In other words, look, they basically accuse Governor Romney of being responsible for a woman's cancer death. They've called him a felon. They said he's a tax cheat. President Obama himself said their plan is for dirty air and dirty water, and kids with autism and Down syndrome and the elderly will, quote, fend for themselves. Right. What is the best way to counter that?
About this. I'm really not worried about this at all, because people see through this. Look, I represent a congressional district that voted for Clinton, Gore, Dukakis, and Obama. My average is about 63% re-election. I'm a conservative. Why is that? It's because people are ready to be talked to like adults. They're ready to have solutions offered to them, and they'll see through this. They don't want to be pandered to like children. They don't want all this negative distortion kind of campaign. So I just don't think people are going to buy this. And when they see that we're offering actual solutions, you know, the Romney plan for a stronger middle class, how to create jobs, how to have economic growth and opportunity turned back on in America, as a contrast to the president's failed record. Look at his record. It's terrible. So he can't run on that. He didn't moderate his positions. If anything, he went far to the left lately. And so that's what he's reduced to. And I just don't think people are going to see it. And the more he throws of this negative campaigning, I think the less credibility he has. And I just think that's why I don't think the country's going to stand for it.
Interesting phenomenon in your district. You're in a pretty Democratic district. Last 4 presidential races, they went Democratic. They voted for Obama by 4%. And 1 in 5 of those Obama voters switched down ticket to vote for you. They split their ticket.
Right. I'm used to that.
What is your then appeal as a conservative? Very different vision for Obama. How do you explain they vote for Obama on the top of the ticket and they vote for Paul Ryan?
The secret to understanding me is I'm not trying to be anybody other than who I actually am. People want candid, refreshing leadership, and I've always tried to go with solutions. I've always tried to say, here's how we get our economy growing, here's how we get our debt under control. That's what Mitt Romney's offering. That's what the Romney plan is all about. How to get jobs created, how to get this debt and deficit under control, how to revive small businesses so we can create jobs, and how to bring growth and opportunity to society instead of this class warfare, instead of speaking to people like they're stuck in some class or station in life. The president is preying on the darker emotions within people: fear, envy, anxiety. We're trying to go back to the American people with an agenda that's uplifting, that produces economic growth, opportunity, that gets the American idea back on track before it's too late.
What is your relationship with President Obama? We all got a chance to go back and look at both you and President Obama on the health care issue. How is that relationship?
Well, we've obviously known each other for some time. We've debated each other fairly vigorously on these issues. I think it's one of mutual respect, but just very strong principled disagreements on just governing philosophy. I think he's basically given us his philosophy here and there on occasion. Like he said in Roanoke, Virginia, if you have a small business, you didn't build that, someone else did. That reveals a philosophy of a leader who believes we ought to have a government-centered society and a government-driven economy. That doesn't work. Look at any other country that's tried that agenda. It's failed. It's failing in Europe. They're in the middle of a debt crisis. And the problem we have is all these empty promises that government makes to people become broken promises. So in Europe, they're cutting people's retirement and health benefits. And that's what we want to avoid from happening. They're raising taxes, entering a recession. That's the kind of economic program that the President Obama has put in place. We have the biggest government since World War II, the largest deficits since World War II, 23 million people struggling to find work. Under President Obama's policies, the poverty rates in this country are the highest they've ever been. Nearly 1 in 6 Americans are in poverty. It's not working. He obviously knows that, but he hasn't changed his tune. He's offering more of the same, and we're offering a very clear break with that and a path to prosperity and opportunity and growth.
The president at different times, though, said that he was going to fix these things. He said he'd cut the deficit in half. He said he'd create jobs. We have fewer Americans working now. He talked about a stimulus, shovel-ready jobs. They weren't so shovel-ready, to quote him. What went wrong? Because obviously he wouldn't have fought for these programs if he didn't think they'd be successful. What do you think went wrong?
Well, I think that's right. He got everything he wanted except for cap and trade, which was filibustered. Now he's trying to deliver that through the EPA and regulations. So remember, the first 2 years of his presidency, his party controlled all of government. So he got almost every agenda item on his agenda passed. It failed because these policies don't work. More regulating, more taxing, more borrowing, more spending, that doesn't work. Having what I call crony capitalism, where you take money from successful small businesses, spend it in Washington on favored industries, on favored individuals, picking winners and losers in the economy, that's not pro-growth economics. That's not entrepreneurial economics. That's not helping small businesses. That's cronyism. That's corporate welfare. It doesn't work. It's never worked. The president is still wedded to it. And that's why you have such a failure of leadership. And that's why I just don't think people are going to rehire this president, because number one, it failed. Number two, he's just promising more of the same. And number three, we're offering a very clear break with that and a path to get back onto prosperity.
And later tonight, and welcome back to Hannity. Here now is the conclusion of my exclusive interview with Governor Romney's running mate, Congressman Paul Ryan. One of the main attack lines that the president and his campaign are using is class warfare. There are currently, 6 different specific tax brackets. You wanted to reduce them to 2, 10% and 25%. Explain how reforming the tax code would help people,
Right.
and also explain it through the prism or the narrative that this is, Republicans only helping rich people.
So let's take a look at the current code. The people who use all the write-offs and most of the special interest loopholes and deductions are the people in the top 2 tax brackets. That means more of their income is sheltered from taxation. You take away those loopholes, and more of their income is subject to taxation, which allows us to lower everybody's tax rates across the board. It's a fair, simple, competitive system. We are here in a steel manufacturing, fabricating business. This business is paying the individual tax rate just like 80% of all businesses in America do. And when you keep raising that top tax rate, you're punishing those successful small businesses, which is where most of our jobs come from. So when you hear the president say class warfare, you think Aaron Rodgers or Prince Fielder or some movie star. You're actually hitting these successful small businesses, the job creators. So we're saying get rid of the loopholes, lower everybody's rates, a fair, simpler system that creates economic growth.
It seems that the country's going to have a pretty important decision to make. You have 2 competing visions for the country.
Very much so.
How do you describe their vision from your perspective? I mean, do you think Obama wants $1 trillion plus deficits every year? He obviously signed them into law. He's spending the money versus what? What will be the budget? First year, will you have $1 trillion deficit?
So I wouldn't say what he wants. It's what we're getting.
What we're getting.
We're getting broken promises on deficits, broken promises on jobs, broken promises on bringing people together in this country. We're not going to do that. We're going to get this deficit under control. And we've shown through various budgets we've offered, we can get this deficit down fast. We can get the size of government back down to where it historically has been very quickly, so that we don't have the biggest government we've had since World War II, which is a world war posture. We are showing that it's not too late to get the American idea revived, to get people back to work, to get people back on the ladder of life. Look, when I was a kid growing up in Janesville, Wisconsin, just like anybody growing up in a middle-income family, I washed dishes, I worked at McDonald's, I did landscaping jobs, I waited tables, I did all of that stuff.
I heard you drove the Wienermobile.
I sold Oscar Mayer products to meat managers, and they let me drive it once, so I wasn't technically the Wienermobile driver.
Yeah.
But it never occurred to me that I was fixed in some station in life, that I had some limit to my life and my opportunity. I was an American pursuing my version of the American dream. What President Obama is doing, he's dividing people in this country. He's speaking to people as if they're stuck in their current station in life, and only the government is here to help them cope with it. It's very dour. It's very cynical. It's not the American idea. We're going to reject that, and we're going to give the country a very clear choice of 2 futures. Do you want the opportunity society with the safety net, a prosperous society where you can make the most of your life, or do you want Barack Obama's failed agenda, a cradle-to-grave welfare state which ends up in a debt crisis, a recession, and lower take-home pay and less jobs? It is just that clear, and that's why we feel obligated to let the country decide which of these 2 visions they want.
You're known as the guy that knows the numbers in Washington. Let's talk about foreign policy. You see what's happening in the Middle East, North Africa. You see the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood, now apparently uniting with Iran. Very dangerous meeting coming up. Iran, just in the last week, has twice, through their supreme leader and through Ahmadinejad, threatened to wipe Israel off the map again. Tell us about your foreign policy experience.
Well, most of the traveling I've done throughout my 14 years in Congress has been to the Middle East. I've had to vote to send men and women to war on more than one occasion. I've been to those funerals. I've talked to the widows and the wives and the parents. I've gone to Afghanistan and Iraq to meet with our troops, to learn from them. Obviously, I have a lot more experience than Barack Obama did when he became president. But if you take a look at our current posture, President Obama is, quote-unquote, leading from behind. He's rejected the peace through strength doctrine. He's outsourcing our foreign policy decision-making to the UN so that countries like Russia can exercise their veto power over us. What it is doing is it's giving our allies a loss of faith in American leadership. And these, what I call reckless, irresponsible defense cuts that are the result of the president's failed leadership, are weakening our resolve and weakening our national security and our national defense at a time when it's very important that we get back to the peace through strength doctrine. We have an unquestionable advantage in military. That's why I helped write and pass the bill to prevent those irresponsible defense cuts from passing, to replace those spending cuts with other spending cuts that ought to occur in government. And I agree with Mitt Romney. We need to strengthen our resolve with our allies like Israel. We need to make sure that our adversaries respect us and understand us clearly. That's not the case today. And we need to get back to the peace through strength doctrine by having a strong military.
Would you support Israel if they deem it necessary for their national security to take out?
Israel has every right to protect their national security interests. And Iran and Iran's nuclear weapon capability is an existential threat to not only Israel, but it's a threat to our own national security. The last thing we want is an arms race in the Middle East. And I really do think that the president's lack of leadership on this issue, his lack of courageous moral support for Israel during this time has brought us to where we are. Going to the UN and saying that the beginning of negotiations must start with the 67 borders undercuts our ally. His references to Bibi Netanyahu with the French president undercuts our allies. And so I think that has done more to distance the peace process and done more to embolden countries like Iran than anything else.
All right, your counterpart is a guy by the name of Joe Biden. He recently had, well, I guess you might say his latest gaffe. They want to put you all back in chains. Your thoughts about Biden? You ready to debate him? And what did you think of those remarks?
I enjoy debate. It's what we do in Congress. So to me, I love spirited debates about ideas. And I've known Joe a long time. We get along personally quite well. And so I'm looking forward to debating Joe on just our different visions for the future. You know, with respect to the things he says, these are the things people say when they've run out of ideas and solutions. These are the things people say when they have a terrible track record that they can't run on, when they're not offering anything new, and when they're trying to knock this campaign down into the gutter of smear and fear, anger and frustration. That's what you get. We're not going to fall for that. I don't think the people of this country are going to fall for that. I think they want to see us get back on top as America, and we're going to do that.
All right, last question. As you look at the electoral map, Florida, important state, Ohio, Wisconsin is in play, you believe?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, you know all those, Pennsylvania. As you look at all those states, the swing states, the ones that will define this election and the winner, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, these are states that senior citizens want to know that they're not going to have their Medicare raided. They want to know that the promises that were made to them that they organized their retirements around are going to be kept. They're small business states. They're states where most people get their jobs from successful small businesses, and they want a commander-in-chief who is championing small business, not demeaning success. So I really believe that states, you know, Wisconsin, I come from the Midwest. I'm a Midwest guy. I went to college in Ohio. This is where I come from, and it's my firm belief that people are sick of these failed policies. They saw President Obama position himself as one thing in 2008, and now he's an entirely different kind of a candidate. And they want leadership. We're offering it, and I think they're going to vote for it.
All right. Your kids and wife having a good time out there?
They're doing fine.
Looks like they're having fun on stage with you.
Yeah, they do. They like it.
Congressman, great to see you again.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Appreciate it.